Before a single word is spoken, there is already a message being transmitted. The energy that radiates from a person's presence carries more weight than the most carefully chosen sentences. It is the tone that precedes speech, the vibration that fills a space before sound is even heard. This is why some individuals can enter a room and immediately shift its atmosphere without having to say anything. Their energy speaks first, and their words follow after. Words are only containers. It is the energy behind them that gives them life. Energy before words is the essence of authenticity. When a person's inner state is aligned with peace, presence, and clarity, their communication requires no embellishment. Their words flow as a natural extension of their being, not as a mask to hide what they truly feel. On the other hand, when the inner state is clouded with confusion, fear, or resentment, even the kindest words can feel hollow. People do not only listen with their ears, they sense with their hearts. They perceive whether energy matches expression. This understanding invites us to reconsider the way we approach communication. Rather than focusing solely on refining speech, the first task is to refine energy. If silence itself feels heavy, then the words that emerge from it will carry the same weight. If silence feels clear and calm, the words born from it will reflect that clarity. Energy is the soil. Words are the plants. The soil must be nourished for anything meaningful to grow. Observe carefully how energy moves before words. When anger is present, the body tightens, the breath shortens, the eyes harden, and even before sound arises, others already sense tension. When joy is present, the body expands, the breath deepens, the eyes soften, and those nearby feel warmth even before a smile forms. In this way, energy is constantly communicating, even without deliberate intention. It does not ask permission to be felt. It is already there, already shaping connection. The practice, then, is to cultivate awareness of one's own energy. Most people are unaware of what they are transmitting. They focus on external expression, not realizing that communication begins long before articulation. By bringing awareness to the body, to the breath, to the state of mind, one becomes more conscious of the silent messages being sent. This awareness is not about suppressing what is felt, but about understanding the quality of one's inner state and how it colors every interaction. Energy before words also reveals the subtle power of presence. Presence is not about dominating attention or filling silence with noise. Presence is the ability to be so grounded in the moment that others feel it. A person with presence does not need to speak often. Their energy alone communicates stability, trust, and clarity. This presence cannot be faked, for it arises not from performance, but from inner alignment. Words without presence are fragile, easily forgotten. Energy with presence is remembered long after speech fades. Consider the moments in life when words fall short. Consoling someone in deep grief, encouraging someone in despair, or facing a situation where language cannot capture the depth of experience. In such moments, it is not the words that matter most, but the energy conveyed through a look, a touch, or silence. The comfort does not come from sentences, but from the vibration of compassion that precedes them. Energy has always been the first language, older and more universal than spoken words. When energy is neglected, words can become tools of manipulation. They may sound convincing but feel false because the energy does not support them. This dissonance creates mistrust. On the other hand, when energy and words align, the impact is undeniable. A simple statement like, "I believe in you," carries immense strength if spoken from genuine conviction. The same phrase, spoken without aligned energy, becomes empty and unconvincing. Energy authenticates words. Energy before words also plays a role in self-communication. The way one speaks internally is shaped by the energy one carries. If the inner energy is heavy with doubt, the inner voice will echo with negativity. If the energy is uplifted, the inner voice becomes a source of encouragement. Before speaking to oneself, there is already a current of energy guiding the tone of that inner dialogue. This is why changing energy shifts perception, and perception in turn shapes reality. The cultivation of energy requires consistent practice. Breathing with awareness, observing thoughts without attachment, moving the body with mindfulness, all of these practices refine energy. Over time, one notices that the quality of silence changes, from restless silence to calm silence, from heavy silence to spacious silence. And from that silence, words begin to carry a different resonance. They are no longer hurried, no longer forced. They emerge naturally, with weight and clarity. Energy before words is not about abandoning language, but about honoring the foundation upon which language stands. It reminds us that words are not the beginning of communication, but its continuation. To truly connect with others, one must first connect with one's own energy. To truly influence others, one must first be influenced by the alignment of one's inner state. Energy prepares the ground, words are only the seeds scattered upon it. This principle extends beyond human interaction. Even in the natural world, energy precedes form. A storm gathers energy long before rain falls. A seed gathers energy long before it sprouts. The sun radiates energy long before it warms the earth. In the same way, human expression gathers energy long before it is spoken. To ignore this is to miss the essence of communication. To honor this is to unlock a deeper way of living and relating. There are moments in life when nothing external has changed, yet everything feels different. The world looks the same, the people around remain the same, but how you experience them alters in a subtle yet profound way. This is the shift in presence. It is not about changing the environment or the circumstances. It is about changing the quality of your awareness, the depth of your attention, and the stillness with which you move through life. Presence is not simply about being in a place at a given time. Many are physically present but mentally absent, lost in thought, planning, regretting, or comparing. The true shift in presence happens when the mind is no longer scattered in past memories or future projections, but anchored in the immediacy of this moment. It is like a candle flame in a dark room, steady, unmoving, and yet illuminating everything around it. This presence does not shout. It does not push. It does not seek recognition, yet its power can be felt by all who encounter it. The shift begins internally. It begins by recognizing how much of life is spent outside of this presence. The constant noise of thought, the endless stream of desires and fears, the emotional storms that take us far from ourselves, these are the forces that keep us disconnected. When one starts to notice these patterns without judgment, there is already a movement toward presence. Awareness itself is the seed of transformation. Simply by becoming aware of our distraction, we are a little less distracted. Simply by observing our restlessness, we are a little more still. Presence is not something you have to create. It is already there, beneath the layers of noise, waiting to be uncovered. Think of a lake disturbed by wind and waves. The surface is restless, but the depth remains calm. The shift in presence is the movement of attention from the turbulence on the surface to the stillness beneath. It is learning to dwell in that depth rather than being tossed about by the waves. What changes when this shift takes place? The way you listen becomes different. Instead of hearing only words, you begin to feel the energy behind the words. Instead of waiting for your turn to speak, you begin to truly absorb what is being said. Conversations are no longer competitions of ego, but exchanges of understanding. The way you act becomes different. Actions are no longer impulsive reactions to emotions, but considered responses aligned with clarity. Even your very movement changes, walking, sitting, eating. All are infused with a quiet awareness that makes the ordinary appear sacred. This shift in presence has nothing to do with withdrawing from life. On the contrary, it allows you to engage more fully. When the mind is divided, distracted, fragmented, you are never fully in the experience. You may be at a gathering but thinking of your work. You may be at work but thinking of rest. You may be with someone but caught in your inner dialogue. Presence unifies you. It brings your body, your mind, and your energy into the same moment, the same action, the same space. That alignment is power. The shift in presence also alters the way challenges are met. Problems do not vanish, difficulties still arise, but your relationship with them transforms. Instead of being overwhelmed, presence gives you the capacity to meet situations with clarity. Fear no longer paralyzes in the same way. Anger no longer blinds with the same intensity. Sadness no longer consumes with the same heaviness. The storm may still rage, but there is a quiet space inside that remains untouched. From that space, better decisions are made, wiser words are spoken, and calmer actions are taken. Presence is also contagious. When one person enters a room with true presence, the atmosphere shifts. Others feel more grounded, more calm, even without understanding why. It is like the silence of a forest. You enter it, and immediately your inner restlessness begins to quiet. The shift in presence within one person ripples outward, influencing the energy of others without force or intention. This is why presence is often more powerful than words, because it communicates directly without language. To cultivate this shift requires discipline. Not the discipline of harsh control, but the discipline of consistent returning. Returning to the breath, returning to the body, returning to the now. The mind will wander, that is its nature. Presence is not the elimination of thought, but the constant practice of returning from thought to awareness. Each return strengthens the capacity to remain anchored. Over time, the anchor grows heavier, and the waves of distraction disturb less easily. The shift in presence is also the shift in identity. Most people live identified with their thoughts, their roles, their memories. Presence reveals that these are only passing clouds. What remains when all of that is observed but not clung to? What remains is awareness itself. When identity shifts from the temporary to the timeless, from the content to the context, from the cloud to the sky, there is a profound liberation. You are no longer confined to the stories you tell yourself. You become the space in which all experiences arise and pass away. This shift cannot be measured, yet it is deeply felt. It cannot be taught through theory, only through practice. It cannot be achieved through force, only through surrender. It is simple, yet it takes a lifetime of remembering. Every breath is an opportunity to return. Every step is a chance to anchor. Every moment is an invitation to dwell in presence. And the more you dwell in presence, the more life itself begins to change in its quality, in its depth, in its texture. Without anything external needing to shift at all, respect is not merely a word we exchange in greetings or formalities. It is not limited to a polite gesture or a social expectation. Respect, in its truest form, is the bedrock upon which all meaningful relationships, communities, and inner growth are built. Without respect, connections crumble, trust evaporates, and the path toward transformation becomes clouded with conflict and resistance. To understand respect as the foundation, one must look deeper than external behavior and reach into the essence of how human beings recognize and honor one another. Respect is not about lowering oneself before others, nor is it about demanding acknowledgement. It is the recognition of value within oneself, within others, and within the life that sustains us. When we begin with respect, we begin with an openness that allows communication to flow. A conversation that lacks respect quickly becomes noise. Words may be spoken, but they are not heard. Opinions may be exchanged, but they are not valued. The energy between people becomes heavy, strained, and defensive. Respect is the invisible key that unlocks the willingness to listen, to understand, and to share space without fear. This is why respect is the foundation of harmony, not because it erases differences, but because it makes differences safe to express. Respect also extends beyond human interactions. It is reflected in how we treat nature, time, traditions, and even silence. A person who respects nature understands that every breath of air and drop of water is not guaranteed but given. A person who respects time does not waste it in distraction or carelessness, but uses it to cultivate purpose and presence. A person who respects silence does not rush to fill it with meaningless words, but allows it to carry its weight and wisdom. These forms of respect reveal a deeper truth. Respect is a discipline of awareness. It requires us to notice, to value, and to refrain from exploiting. At the same time, respect must begin within. Many people search for respect from the outside, but they struggle because they do not extend it to themselves first. When an individual does not respect their own body, they treat it carelessly, consuming what harms, ignoring what heals, and pushing it beyond its limits. When they do not respect their own mind, they allow it to become polluted with toxic thoughts, comparisons, and judgments. When they do not respect their own spirit, they chase endlessly after external approval, forgetting the quiet dignity of simply existing. Self-respect is not arrogance. It is not a declaration of superiority. It is the willingness to honor one's life, to take care of it, and to stand firmly in the awareness of one's worth. Only when respect flows inward can it genuinely flow outward. The absence of respect is easily seen in the struggles of daily life. Arguments escalate because neither side respects the other's perspective. Leaders lose trust because they fail to respect the people they serve. Families fall apart because members neglect the respect that binds them together. Even nations enter conflict when respect is lost between cultures and ideologies. All of these fractures, whether small or large, trace back to the same missing foundation. Without respect, the structure of human connection cannot hold. It may appear strong for a time, but cracks inevitably appear and collapse follows. Respect is not weakness. Many mistake respectful behavior as submission, as if to respect someone is to place oneself beneath them. This is not the case. True respect is strength. It requires patience when anger tempts reaction. It requires restraint when pride seeks to dominate. It requires clarity when confusion blurs judgment. To respect is to act with awareness rather than impulse, with principle rather than ego. This is why respect is not just the foundation of relationships, but the foundation of discipline, wisdom, and integrity. Respect also has a transformative power that often goes unnoticed. A harsh word can be softened when delivered with respect. A disagreement can turn into growth when approached with respect. Even correction or discipline, when rooted in respect, becomes an act of care rather than punishment. Respect changes the energy of interactions. It diffuses tension, opens doors, and makes space for growth. When someone feels respected, they are more likely to listen, to cooperate, and to rise to their potential. Respect does not guarantee agreement, but it creates an environment where progress is possible. To build a life where respect is the foundation is to commit to constant awareness. It means asking before speaking, is this word respectful to the other and to myself? It means asking, before acting, does this honor the dignity of those involved? It means asking, before judging, do I understand enough to offer an opinion? Or should I first listen? These questions guide behavior toward balance and harmony. They prevent reckless actions and careless words. They cultivate a presence that is not reactive but intentional. Ultimately, respect as the foundation allows for stability in the face of uncertainty. When storms arise, whether in personal life, relationships, or society, the ground of respect provides steadiness. It prevents collapse into chaos. It ensures that even in disagreement, dignity remains intact. It reminds us that beneath roles, opinions, and identities, there is a shared humanity worthy of recognition. When one builds on respect, one builds on ground that does not shift with every challenge, but holds firm as a base for growth, connection, and transformation. There are feelings that exist beneath the surface of words. They do not always rise to be expressed, nor do they always find a form in language. One such feeling is nervousness. It hides behind the calm face, behind the still body, behind the polite smile. It rarely announces itself directly, and yet it influences the way the breath flows, the way the heart beats, the way the mind moves in quick, unsteady directions. Nervousness is not always loud. It is unspoken, but it is present, shaping the invisible currents of experience. Unspoken nervousness often arises from the fear of being seen too clearly. When a person steps into a new situation, into an unfamiliar room, or into the presence of people whose judgment they silently imagine, the body begins to tighten. The hands may shift, the throat may dry, the breath may shorten, but none of these are declared openly. They are subtle signs, hidden languages of the body, communicating what the lips will not. The nervousness is carried quietly, but it weighs heavily. There is also nervousness that emerges from expectation. The moment before an important task, before speaking in front of others, before stepping forward into an opportunity, the mind begins to question itself. Thoughts whisper, will I succeed? Will I fail? Will I be enough? These questions are not shared. They are not voiced, but they are alive within the individual. This silence does not mean peace, it means containment. Nervousness contained is still nervousness. It presses inward, occupying the chest, settling into the stomach, clouding the clarity of the mind. Yet, there is an important truth hidden within unspoken nervousness. It points towards something meaningful. The body does not react with such intensity to what is unimportant. The tremor in the hand, the restless shifting of the feet, the unsteady breath, these reveal that something matters. Nervousness unspoken is the shadow of value, the echo of significance. One feels nervous because the moment carries weight, because the outcome is not indifferent. And in this sense, nervousness can be seen not only as weakness, but also as a signal of deep engagement. To understand unspoken nervousness, one must first learn to listen to it without judgment. Instead of suppressing the sensations, one observes them. Instead of labeling them as failure, one recognizes them as energy. Nervousness is movement. It is the body preparing, heightening its awareness, sharpening its senses. The mistake comes when one resists this energy, when one hides it so deeply that it turns against the self. If allowed to flow, if allowed to be acknowledged, nervousness can transform into alertness, into readiness, into presence. But silence around nervousness often grows out of fear of exposure. There is a desire to appear strong, to appear confident, to appear untouched by the inner tremors. This silence builds a barrier, and the person carries the storm inside, unable to release it. Over time, this unspoken tension accumulates. The nervousness that once belonged to a single event begins to live permanently within the body. The shoulders tighten, the posture contracts, the eyes lose ease. It becomes not just a momentary visitor, but a constant companion. There is also a social dimension to unspoken nervousness. Many live in cultures where vulnerability is seen as weakness, where expressing inner trembling is discouraged. So people learn to keep their nervousness quiet, to mask it with laughter, to cover it with overconfidence, or to bury it under silence. But what is unspoken does not disappear. It stays, seeking expression in other ways: sleepless nights, restless thoughts, compulsive actions, or sudden anger. Nervousness hidden has many forms of escape, none of which bring true release. Breath is one of the simplest ways to witness and shift nervousness. When the mind is caught in spirals of anxious thought, the breath becomes shallow and fragmented. By returning to deeper breathing, the energy of nervousness finds a rhythm. The silence of nervousness is then met with another silence, the silence of awareness. In this meeting, a transformation occurs. The unspoken becomes spoken, not in words, but in the language of the body finding its balance again. Nervousness unexpressed also teaches humility. It reminds the individual that certainty is never guaranteed, that life always contains unknowns, and that one cannot control every outcome. To feel nervous is to acknowledge that the future is not secure, that mistakes are possible, that vulnerability is real. This awareness can open the door to authenticity. Instead of pretending to be unshaken, one can walk forward despite the trembling. Strength is not the absence of nervousness, but the ability to act with it still present. When nervousness remains unspoken, it becomes a hidden teacher. It teaches that control is an illusion, that the body responds honestly when the mind tries to hide, and that silence within is not always peace. To face nervousness is to face the reality of being human, uncertain, imperfect, and yet capable of stepping forward. The unspoken tension holds within it the potential for growth, if one dares to notice it instead of covering it with layers of denial. The journey with unspoken nervousness is not about eliminating it. It is about understanding it as part of the human experience. It is about learning that the tightness in the chest, the quickened pulse, the restless thought are not enemies but messengers. They indicate that something matters, that one stands on the edge of significance, that life is calling for presence. And though the nervousness may remain unspoken, the body already speaks its language, waiting for awareness to listen without resistance, waiting for silence to become understanding, waiting for tension to transform into movement, waiting for unease to become awakening, waiting for fear to become fuel, waiting for the quiet tremble to reveal its hidden strength, waiting for the unspoken to finally be known. Attention is the purest form of energy you possess. Where your attention goes, life grows. Yet most people scatter their attention like leaves in the wind. They place it on distractions, on fleeting desires, on endless noise, and they wonder why they feel fragmented, restless, and tired. To understand attention is to understand the steering wheel of your existence. To master attention is to reclaim the ability to guide your own mind, your own emotions, and your own path. Stillness is the ground upon which attention rests. Without stillness, attention is restless, like a candle flickering in the storm. When there is stillness, attention becomes like a beam of light, sharp, focused, and unwavering. The relationship between attention and stillness is not separate, they are two sides of the same process. Stillness calms the waters, and attention directs the reflection on its surface. In stillness, the mind no longer wanders into unnecessary corners. In stillness, the body no longer resists the natural rhythm of breath. And in stillness, you begin to experience the immensity of presence. Most people confuse stillness with inactivity. But stillness is not about the absence of motion. It is about the absence of distraction. It is not about being frozen or lifeless. It is about being deeply awake. You can walk in stillness, speak in stillness, and even act with stillness. The difference lies in the way your attention is anchored. When you move from stillness, your movement is precise, deliberate, and filled with clarity. When you speak from stillness, your words carry weight, not because of their volume, but because of their rootedness in awareness. Attention is a precious currency, and like any currency, it can be spent wisely or wasted carelessly. every notification, every demand, every voice calling for you is asking for a portion of it. And the more you allow your attention to be divided, the weaker it becomes. Divided attention leads to divided energy. Divided energy leads to exhaustion, and exhaustion clouds the ability to see. When attention is withdrawn from the unnecessary and returned to the essential, something powerful takes place. The mind reorganizes itself around clarity. Stillness is not a luxury, it is a necessity. In the noise of modern life, stillness becomes the medicine for a restless mind. The body is always moving, the mind is always thinking, but beneath both lies the stillness that never changes. To touch it, one must withdraw attention from the surface and sink deeper. Like a lake, when the surface settles, you can finally see the reflection of the sky. When the mind settles, you can finally perceive the depth of your own being. When attention meets stillness, transformation begins. Your perception sharpens. Things that were once hidden become visible. Patterns that were once automatic become transparent. You begin to notice the subtle influences that shape your choices. You begin to hear the quiet voice beneath the noise, the one that is always present but rarely listened to. With attention rooted in stillness, every moment becomes an opportunity to awaken. Attention without stillness becomes obsession. It chases endlessly, clinging to one object after another. Stillness without attention becomes dullness, a passive emptiness that leads nowhere. But when attention and stillness merge, they create a balance between clarity and presence. Like the inhale and the exhale, they sustain one another. You learn to hold your focus without strain, and you learn to rest without falling into inertia. In stillness, time feels different. Moments expand. The rush of urgency dissolves. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable because you no longer feed chaos with scattered energy. Attention directed from stillness does not waste itself in resistance. It flows naturally, like water finding its path through stone. This is why stillness is a form of strength. It allows attention to conserve its power, to concentrate fully on what matters, and to cut through the unnecessary with precision. Through attention and stillness, the mind becomes disciplined without force. Discipline is not about restriction, it is about the proper direction of energy. Attention trains the mind to return, again and again, to what is essential. Stillness provides the ground on which this training can take place. Over time, the restless waves subside, and attention becomes steady enough to penetrate deeper truths. This is the foundation of mastery, not mastery over others, but mastery over one's own inner landscape. The practice of attention and stillness is simple, but not easy. To sit, to breathe, to observe, without judgment, without running, without reaching, is to confront the restlessness that has been accumulated over years. At first, the mind rebels. Thoughts scream for attention. Emotions rise like storms. But the more you return, the more you realize that these movements lose their grip when you stop feeding them. Stillness is not the absence of thought, but the refusal to be dragged by thought. Attention is not the suppression of distraction, but the deliberate choice to return to what matters. Every master of any art knows this truth. Attention sharpens skill, stillness strengthens spirit. The musician trains attention to hear the silence between notes. The martial artist cultivates stillness to move with precision in chaos. The monk relies on both to transcend the noise of the world. These examples are not separate paths. They are reflections of the same universal principle. Without attention, the spirit drifts. Without stillness, the mind burns out. Together, they awaken a power that is not loud, not aggressive, but unshakable. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your attention. The quality of your attention depends on the depth of your stillness. To neglect this is to live in fragments. To embrace it is to live in wholeness. As water reflects the sky only when it is still, so too can your being reflect truth only when your attention rests upon stillness. When people speak of strength, they often point to the external: muscles, speed, resilience in the face of difficulty. Yet the deepest strength is hidden, concealed not in how the body moves, but in what the mind carries in silence. The inner state is not immediately visible to others. It lives behind the words, behind the smiles, behind the behaviors and choices. To reveal the inner state is not about confessing or exposing secrets to the outside world. It is about turning the light inward and having the courage to see what truly resides within oneself. The inner state governs perception. Two people can stand before the same sunrise. One sees beauty, renewal, and promise, while the other sees only another cycle of exhaustion and meaninglessness. The event is identical, yet the interpretation is shaped by the state of the mind and heart. When the inner state is burdened by unrest, dissatisfaction, or resentment, no external circumstance has the power to bring lasting joy. Conversely, when the inner state is clear, still, and aligned, even the smallest details of life, wind on the skin, a bird's flight, the sound of flowing water, carry immeasurable depth and richness. Revealing the inner state requires honesty that many try to avoid, for it is not always comfortable to face what is there. Behind ambition may be insecurity. Behind anger may be fear. Behind restlessness may be unprocessed grief. To live on the surface is simpler, but it keeps the patterns hidden. One continues to repeat the same behaviors, engage in the same conflicts, and chase the same illusions. To stop and turn inward is to step into territory where masks fall away. And once the masks are removed, the raw condition of the heart and mind is undeniable. This process is not about judgment. It is not about labeling the inner state as good or bad. It is about recognition. If one feels lost, then the recognition of that lostness is itself the beginning of clarity. If one feels heavy with resentment, then the honesty of seeing it clearly is already the first movement toward release. To reveal the inner state to oneself is like opening a door in a dark room. The furniture was always there, yet unseen. Now it is illuminated, and once it is seen, it can be arranged differently. Many people attempt to control their outer world while leaving the inner state unattended. They rearrange circumstances, chase after possessions, adjust appearances, and modify roles. But the dissatisfaction always returns because the origin of unrest is not in the external arrangement, but in the internal condition. To reveal the inner state is to place attention where it matters most. The world outside will never be in perfect order. Seasons change, relationships shift, uncertainty is constant. The only ground of true stability is the ground of one's own inner alignment. Silence is the key to revelation. In silence, the constant movement of thought begins to slow. The noise that covers the inner state subsides, and underneath the noise, the truth becomes audible. Many are afraid of silence because they fear what will surface when the distractions disappear. Yet it is in silence that one discovers not only the turbulence, but also the strength hidden beneath. The mind may first reveal its chaos, but beneath that chaos lies clarity. The heart may first reveal its wounds, but beneath the wounds lies resilience. Revealing the inner state is also a practice of humility. It demands the recognition that one is not always as composed as one appears. It requires the courage to acknowledge vulnerability, contradiction, and imperfection. And yet, in that humility there is great liberation. For once the truth of the inner state is acknowledged, there is no longer the exhausting effort of hiding or pretending. What is seen can be accepted, and what is accepted can begin to transform. This process is ongoing, not a single revelation. The inner state shifts from moment to moment. Old wounds resurface, new challenges arise, hidden aspects of the self emerge. The work is continuous, again and again to turn inward, to look without fear, to see what is there. With time, the act of revealing becomes natural, and the inner state becomes less a mystery and more a landscape one learns to navigate with patience and wisdom. When the inner state is revealed, connection with others changes as well. No longer does one project shadows onto the world. Instead of blaming, one sees the role of one's own mind. Instead of demanding that others fill inner emptiness, one recognizes that fulfillment must arise within. Relationships grow lighter when the inner state is revealed, because interaction is no longer driven by unacknowledged wounds or hidden expectations. To live with an unrevealed inner state is to live in conflict with oneself. To reveal it is to step into alignment, to see the roots of thought, emotion, and action clearly. From this place, life does not become free of challenge, but the challenges no longer control. The storms may still come, but the awareness of the inner state provides an anchor. And as the anchor deepens, the capacity to meet life with equanimity grows stronger. Revealing the inner state is not about changing who one is, but about finally seeing who one already is without distortion. It is about uncovering what has been covered, acknowledging what has been denied, and accepting what has been ignored. Through this revelation, the inner life becomes transparent, the outer life becomes simpler, and the two begin to reflect each other in harmony.